It's interesting. When I was a public defender years and years ago, I represented quite a few individuals during the 3 years I was there, and had suffered from mental illness. I knew it. The prosecution knew it. Judge knew it, but there wasn't very much we could do about it other than try to get some treatment if they were on probation, and then if they went to jail, they would get it there. But there wasn't much. And then you fast forward that to years, a number of years, and now I'm sitting there as prosecutor. And in January of '05, one of the assistant prosecutors came into my office and said, we have a serious issue here. We have a good 50 individuals who are indicted, and they're suffering from mental illness. And we've been discussing it with the defense bar, and I'd like you to go, if you would, down to Governor Cody's task force committee on mental health to testify about it. So I learned a little bit more about the individuals. I did go down in Woodbridge, I believe it was, and I testified. And I told them what we were trying to do, and that was we felt that there was a need to divert these people out of the system, but we needed some kind of help. And I wasn't sure what kind of help it was other than some psychiatric treatment. Well, I received a response a couple of months later when the governor's office awarded us a grant of $600,000 and said, what do you want to do with this? Once we got this program going, we realized that we had to have some form of an evaluation done. So Trinitas became involved. They provided a lady who had a master's in social work. She made the initial diagnosis at the jail. We also reached out, of course, to the defense counsel to tell them that this wasn't the type of evaluation that would be used in any further proceeding. We found that the treatment plan was very effective because what it did do, it gave us an opportunity to tell us, well, okay, this person has to, for instance, if they're suffering from a bipolar disorder, that they have to take certain medication. And if they took that medication, they would be fine. So part of the plan said, you will take your medication every day. That meant we could then release them from jail. So we cut back on the jail time in our county. It was significant. We cut down almost 3 weeks on jail time on average with people who were suffering from mental illness. The preliminary indication is that the recidivism rate may be somewhere around 25 to 30%, which is really low. If you look at recidivism with mentally ill people who are not properly treated, it's well into the 70s and 80s. We're also trying to help them with these programs to find housing, to assist them in becoming involved in AA or Narcotics Anonymous or any number of social programs. I don't believe that a prosecutor should just automatically prosecute people. That's not really what my job is. It's to as best I can, to protect the general public from criminals. But it's also to protect defendants from themselves, to protect the police from individuals who may hurt the police. This type of program is a win-win because what we do is we take people who, a lot of whom have no hope, and we provide them with an opportunity. And it really doesn't cost a lot of money. The amazing part is you're keeping them out of jail in Union County. That's $140 a day. Multiply that times 3 weeks. We know, too, that we're keeping them out of state's prison, and that's costing anywhere, well, I think the figure is somewhere around $62,000 to $65,000 if you treat them for mental illness in a state's prison. And we know we've kept out, on average, about 4 to 5 a year. So you just multiply that figure out, and it's a lot of money. So all these good things are happening as a result of a program that started with one prosecutor coming in to talk to me. Upwards of 24% of all the prisoners in our state's prisons suffer from mental illness. And if you work that out to finite figures, you could be talking somewhere around 6,000 to 7,000 people with at least 4,000 with serious mental disorders. We know that some of those with serious mental disorders can be treated. The police officers that we're dealing with have accepted the reality that there are people out there who really can't control themselves because of some chemical imbalance. They're learning that mental illness is not necessarily something that happened when they were a young kid or their families treating them a certain way. Mental illness is basically a chemical imbalance of sorts. There may be psychological problems, but the underlying reason is chemical. And they're learning that, and they're starting to realize, well, wait a minute, maybe these people aren't quote unquote crazy, as they say. And I've noticed it, especially with the younger law enforcement personnel. I've also noticed it with the older ones. And where I first picked this up was on a training of a SWAT team, where we had where we had a clinical psychologist come in and talk to them about their feelings and how they might have periods of aggression or post-traumatic stress as a result of all the work they do. And within 20 minutes, and their arms were folded and they're looking stern. 20 minutes, their arms are down. Another half an hour or so, they start leaning forward, asking questions about feelings, and how I feel about this, how I feel about that. That was another one of those aha moments. I said, you break down a barrier, and all of a sudden, floods of all sorts of things, good things can come out. I've seen that happen here in Union County. I've seen that happen with the police. They're more willing to accept this type of change now once they acknowledge that it exists, that there's a problem. It's like, okay, it really is out there, but I can do something about it. Then they're willing to do something about it. It's really very interesting to observe over a very short period of time. This isn't taking a long time. This is over the past 2 or 3 years. I've noticed an incredible change. I mean, we're getting upwards of 300-400 police officers who are trained in suicide awareness, and the response on this has been 99 and 9/10 positive. And they start talking about how they feel, how some friend that they know is having problems. So I'm just amazed at how there is this change going on, and it's not making them any softer in what they do, and they're not any less macho, and even the women less macho, because some of them are, if that's the right word. It's just making them more aware of their surroundings, and I think it's a good thing. This isn't a bad thing. This is a good thing. It goes pretty much with what I said earlier. Right. There's a recognition on their part. Let's face it, the Army is military, the law enforcement is paramilitary, and you're right. They are subject to trauma on a regular basis, and sometimes not on a regular basis, but periodic, and they don't even realize they may be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's important, I think, for us to learn more about it. That's what we're trying to do. And believe it or not, the crisis intervention training is very good, too, because one law enforcement can look at another one and say, maybe that he or she has a problem. I mean, I think that's important, too, as much as we train people. Well, what's interesting in law enforcement nowadays, it's changed so much. It's not just a cop who walks with a stick on a beat, and worries about whatever might be domestic violence or a B&E. It's so sophisticated now. I can't imagine the training that we're going to be facing over the course of the next 10 years. It's got to increase many times over what it is even now. And now we spend thousands of hours training men and women in various areas. This is an important area. The post-traumatic stress disorder is an important, as I've learned. I learned that too. I mean, I didn't know that. And the hardest ones to, I think, approach at times, and they don't want to hear this, are the chiefs, because they've been around a long time, and they're toughen up about it. Like I heard one sheriff tell me recently, when he was a young officer, he was involved in a shooting where he shot someone. And he went back to police headquarters, filled out the report, went out with a couple of his buddies, had a couple of shots, went back to work the next day, and that was it. No one said a word. And he said, when I think back on that, how I was suffering at the time, and I couldn't discuss it. He said, and I didn't think anything of it. That was just part of the role I had. And he said it wasn't the role that I should have had. I should have been able to talk to someone about it and express my feelings about it. And that doesn't make you any less a tough guy. Matter of fact, it tells me you are a tough guy, that you're willing to express your feelings. Hopefully some people will pay attention to what we're talking about here. This is serious stuff. We can save a lot of lives.